On the night of Friday, January 9, 2026, the small rural community of Karasa hamlet, Palambari village, in Gantarang district, Bulukumba Regency, Indonesia, was settling into what seemed like an ordinary evening. The village, surrounded by quiet roads, scattered houses, and the distant sounds of crickets, carried the familiar rhythm of rural life after dark. Most families had finished dinner and were spending time inside their homes. Some people were chatting on their porches, while others prepared to rest after a long day of work. Nothing about that night suggested that a tragedy was about to unfold. Inside one modest home in the hamlet, a 44-year-old father known by the initials AB was in the kitchen. The kitchen was simple, like many others in the village: plain walls, basic cooking tools, and the faint smell of food lingering from dinner earlier that evening. It was a space that had seen years of daily routines, family conversations, and quiet moments of ordinary life. AB moved around the kitchen, unaware that this seemingly normal moment would soon turn into the last moments of his life. And even more tragically, the person who would end his life was his own son. His son, AW, a 20-year-old young man, had been carrying a growing sense of disappointment and frustration for months. It was not something that had appeared suddenly. Instead, it had slowly built up over time, quietly shaping his thoughts and emotions. The source of that frustration was something that, on the surface, seemed simple: a motorcycle. For many young people in rural areas, owning a motorcycle is more than just having transportation. It represents freedom, independence, and a sense of personal pride. It allows someone to travel more easily, find work, visit friends, and feel a step closer to adulthood. For AW, the motorcycle had become exactly that. Months earlier, his father had promised that he would buy him one. At first, the promise filled him with excitement. AW believed that soon he would finally have what many of his peers already had. But as time passed, the promise remained just that, a promise. Each time he asked about it, his father reassured him that it would happen eventually. Later, he would say, "Be patient. We'll see." For the father, the delay likely had a very practical reason: money. Life in the village was not always easy. Supporting a family required careful decisions about spending. A motorcycle was a significant purchase, and perhaps the father simply had not yet found the means to fulfill his promise. But for the son, the meaning of that promise slowly changed. What began as hope gradually turned into frustration. Frustration turned into resentment. And resentment, when left unresolved, can quietly grow into something far more dangerous. By the time the night of January 9th arrived, the disappointment inside AW had been building for months. That night, something inside him finally broke. AW approached his father in the kitchen. At first, it may have seemed like just another conversation about the same issue that had been discussed many times before. But this time, the conversation did not remain calm. The discussion quickly turned into an argument. Voices began to rise. Words became sharper. The tone shifted from questioning to accusing. Emotions, which had been buried for so long, suddenly surfaced all at once. According to police reports later, AW was in a highly emotional state that night. Some reports also suggested that he had consumed alcohol beforehand, which may have further weakened his ability to control his anger and judgment. In moments like these, when emotions run high and rational thinking fades, situations can spiral out of control in seconds. During the argument, AW was already carrying a badik, a traditional dagger commonly associated with the culture of South Sulawesi. The blade, small but extremely sharp, has long been known as a weapon capable of causing deadly injuries. As the argument escalated, the tension in the kitchen became unbearable. Then, in a moment of rage and lost control, everything changed. AW moved toward his father. He grabbed him and pushed him back until his father's body was pressed against the wall of the kitchen. The argument had already reached a breaking point. Without hesitation, AW raised the badik. Then he stabbed his father once in the left side of the back. It was only one stab. But it was enough. The blade penetrated deeply, causing severe internal injury and heavy bleeding. AB collapsed to the floor. Blood quickly spread across the kitchen floor as the gravity of what had just happened became painfully clear. Panic erupted inside the house. Family members and nearby residents rushed toward the scene after hearing the commotion. Shock, fear, and confusion filled the air. Despite the chaos, people acted quickly. AB was rushed to Sultan Dang Raja Regional Hospital in Bulukumba, the nearest hospital capable of providing emergency medical treatment. Those who brought him there still held on to hope that the doctors might be able to save him. Every second mattered. Doctors attempted to treat the severe wound and stop the bleeding. But the injury was too critical. Despite their efforts, AB was ultimately declared dead. The fatal stab wound had caused too much damage. While the family struggled to process the devastating loss, news of the stabbing quickly spread through the community. In a village where everyone knows one another, shocking events rarely stay quiet for long. Soon, the report reached the police. The Res Mob unit of the Bulukumba Police Department responded immediately. Officers began searching for the suspect, who had fled the immediate scene after the incident. The search did not take long. AW was found not far from the location of the crime. When officers approached him, he did not resist. He was taken into custody and brought to Bulukumba Police Headquarters for questioning. According to officers, AW still appeared emotional at the time of his arrest. During the investigation, the motive behind the tragedy slowly became clearer. The anger that led to the fatal stabbing was rooted in months of disappointment over the unfulfilled promise of a motorcycle. To outsiders, it might sound like a small issue. But to the young man involved, the issue had grown into something deeply personal, something tied to pride, expectations, and unresolved frustration. The case quickly shocked residents across Bulukumba. It was not only the violence of the act that disturbed the community, but the heartbreaking reality behind it: a son had taken the life of his own father. Neighbors who had known the family struggled to understand how a disagreement within a household could end in such irreversible tragedy. What might have begun as a family argument, a moment of anger that could have passed, had instead turned into a fatal act that changed many lives forever. Authorities soon named AW as a suspect and placed him in detention. He now faces charges under Indonesian criminal law for murder or severe assault resulting in death, crimes that carry the possibility of many years, even decades, in prison. The legal process will determine his fate. But no court decision can undo what has already happened. In the end, the tragedy left behind a painful reality. A father lost his life. A son lost his future. And a family was left shattered by a moment of uncontrolled anger. What began as a promise about a motorcycle, something that once symbolized hope, ultimately became the spark that led to a tragedy no one could ever take back.